My friends, the Silvertone Corporation is one of the backbones of the music industry, whether we like it or not. They've been around for a very long time, and millions of Silvertone instruments have been sold. Here's one that we're going to be restoring. Stay tuned right after this, and we'll tell you more about it. Hello my friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks workshop. We've got a new project we're about to start on. It's an old Silvertone mandolin. And overall, it's actually in pretty good shape. In terms of the body and all that, that's all fairly solid. I don't think there's any real issues there. The issue is with the neck. And there is a screw in the neck trying to hold the neck on. The neck apparently has pulled up over the time, and it has created a real underbow situation in the fretboard. So let me show you the underbow situation. I think you can even see under there that it's quite an underbow. I would guess it at being approximately 100,000th of an inch. So that's a little less than 1/8 of an inch, but there's plenty there to go around. And you basically need almost zero. So we've got to get rid of all that. My guess is that just the fact that this has been pulled up over the years has caused this to curl here. In other words, it pulls up here, therefore it has to curl right here. So we're going to take this all apart and just see how much work we have to do on this. Come along for the ride. Well, there you go. I'm just got the strings off of it and took it apart. Now I'm going to see if we can get this screw out of here. First thing I want out of this thing is this goofy screw. I don't like to see instruments put together with mechanical fasteners if we can avoid it. You know, I'm not saying I'm above it. I'm just saying if we can avoid it. Not saying I wouldn't put it back in. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do, but most of the time you can avoid things like this. It was in there pretty doggone tight, I'll tell you that. This screwdriver just happens to fit it really tightly, so it worked. It got it out of there. If I'd have put a loose fitting screwdriver in there on that, it probably wouldn't have come out. That was really tight. So you can see the screw, a pretty long one. Let's see how loose the neck is now. Is that really doesn't seem that loose? That's amazing. Honestly, doesn't seem, well, it moves a little bit more. I can see it moving just a tiny bit more. I imagine with all the strings on there, it would get pretty loose. Okay, so now I got a decision to make. Do I want to take the whole fretboard off, or do I want to pull it here, cut it here to get to that neck joint? On a mandolin like this, I'm tempted to just cut it here. That'll save him all kinds of time and money. You know, now I look at it, looks like there's some kind of I didn't see that before. There's a filler strip under here, or either that or the binding just comes down so far. That might be what it is. Yeah, it's probably, I don't know if you can see this on camera, but the binding only comes down to here, but the neck, or whatever that is, goes all the way down here. And it goes, seems like it goes all the way through. Same way on the other side. Yeah, well, the quick and dirty way would be to pull this fret, saw it through here, pop this off, then I'd have access to the neck joint, fix it, put this all back on. And the other thing about that is, if this is loose here, then we have more options on, you know, making this fit up to this without having that big curl in here. I kind of think that's the way to go on an instrument like this. I mean, if you take this all apart here, then you're going to have scarring all through here, and that's got to be repaired too, and that doesn't come cheap. And by cutting it off here, the only scar you're going to have is that little tiny line right there, and that little tiny line is nothing in my opinion compared to all the other damage that you could have. And it sure does speed up the process and save the customer a lot of money. And on it, you know, this is an inexpensive instrument, so that's probably the way to go. And that's the way I think I am going to go. I think that's it right there. Whoops, see, look at there. Popped it right up. Now we got access to the neck joint, and it just makes all kinds of sense to do it that way. Well, that didn't come up even, so see if this tool will pop up the rest of it without breaking it too badly. There we go. That's what we wanted. And we can put this back together. No problem whatsoever. Makes the job a whole lot faster, a whole lot quicker, a whole lot cheaper. This is a type of glue. I don't know, it's very similar to hide glue, but I'm not sure it's hide glue. Really not positive. Kind of like hide glue. All right, let's see. Yeah, I can see it loose already. Look at there, it's already loose. Maybe I can just pop it out of there. That would be awesome, wouldn't it? Yep, I think I can. I think it's going to come out of there. Let's just try tapping it. Yep, it's going to come right out. There you go. There you go. Now there's how you save some time and money. So, you know, that estimate I gave them, it just went down by an hour or two. I have these little wooden dowels, and that just happens to fit that screw hole that was drilled through the neck here. It's not a perfect fit, it's a teeny bit loose, but I think it'll serve our purposes well enough. And so I'm going to stick the glue down in here. I'm going to spread the glue on this stick also. Probably not even necessary to do this, you understand. I just figure it won't hurt to do it. So sometimes when stuff doesn't hurt and it could potentially help, then why not, you know? And that's kind of where we're at here. I don't see any harm in doing it, so why not? It's a little on the loose side, like I said, so I'm just going to let it sit and percolate for overnight probably, because I don't really need to get this done today. And I'll just let it sit there and get hard, or, you know, cure by tomorrow, and then we'll trim it off smooth. And then there's a piece of wood that I've got for a filler to fill in this little part here that cracked off, and we'll do that. Well, I had a second thought. You know how that is sometimes. I've decided to go ahead and glue in this extra little piece of wood that's right here too. And the only reason is because, you know, that'll just save an extra step tomorrow. You know, I'm sure I can clamp it into position and get it to hold. It's kind of fills that spot just really well. Also makes that little dowel just a teeny bit tighter, I think. And I think I'll just put a plastic deal over that. Put the plastic like that, and then put the clamp on it right here. And I think that'll be sufficient. So we'll let that set until tomorrow then. I guess a second thought is to go ahead and glue this little piece back that broke off when we took it apart. Figured might as well get her glued up. More things we can get done in one step, the better. Just cleaning off the excess that we don't want to fill it up with glue in places that it don't need glue. And then we can easily clamp this. I think I'll just clamp it right there with that one, and put another clamp on it over here a little bit further, and that should be more than sufficient, I think. Yeah, maybe I'll just go ahead and clamp that one right out on the end, and put yet another clamp right there. Then we know we got her covered really well, and you can see all the glue that squeezed out. That's That's why you put all those clamps on there. Again, you'll never squeeze all the glue out of a joint. I don't care what they tell you. It ain't never going to happen. I've squeezed every joint I've ever glued in 40 years as tight as I can get them. And to my knowledge, I've never had an actual glue joint come apart that I've glued, to my knowledge. I'm not saying it never happened, but I didn't know about it if it did. Well, I took the clamps off of this because it's been sitting for over an hour, and I thought, well, it'll be good if I could go ahead and get this hole filled in. It's going to take a lot of filler, and it's going to need to dry overnight. That way, tomorrow, we can move on from here. I'm going to try to poke this down in there pretty good. In fact, I'm going to let it mound up a little bit so that we can sand it off smooth, and hopefully you won't notice it. It might take it a day to dry with as much as I had to put in there. We'll just let it sit like that, rough. It's not a big deal. We can sand that off really easy, and hopefully that's enough to keep it from sinking in below level. We'll know tomorrow. Nothing that we can't do different if it didn't work. Well, I've skipped a day here. I didn't do anything on this yesterday, but we're ready to start figuring out how to put this thing back together. And I've glued up a lot of pieces and parts and things, that little chips and things that came out of this. I think it's time to clean up this and see if we can't get it back in there. Where I put this dowel in, I left the dowel sticking out a little bit proud, so I'm just going to plane the end of the dowel off there. So it's now flush with the end of the dovetail. There's some glue on this. Trying to get rid of all of the excess stuff, and especially glue. You don't want glue on there. And this is just heavy glue. So I got a lot of that kind of cleaning up to do. Not going to really show any more of that, but I just wanted to make the point in the video that you really do want it cleaned very well. You don't want any glue there, because that's where all your strength comes from. A wood to wood with glue in the joint will work great, but old glue there does not glue very well. Here's another little tip or trick that you can do. This area here has got paint on it where I'm going to be putting the extension back, and I'm going to get all that paint off. I've already scored a line right up to where this is going to go back on, and so I'm going to get rid of all of the paint and anything else, glue or anything else that's in the area, because when I glue this back, this is part of your strength. Even though I've cut this off, in other words, when you glue this back down and you've got this in here and you glue this back down, the fact that this is glued down tight to the top keeps this from pulling up, because it can't push this back, if you understand what I'm saying. So you put this up there real tight against there, glue it down, and this becomes part of your strength of your neck, because if you see there, see how it's pushing this piece back? See, it's pushed it back, and because of that pull-up action. So this is a critical piece, even though I cut it off. So that's why I want to make sure this is perfectly clean. So when I put this back down on here, it's going to be very solid. So little things like this, they seem like they wouldn't make any difference, but trust me, almost everything makes a difference when it comes to strength. I'm getting that really clean. It looks good. And if you accidentally get outside of your lines or something, you can always touch it up with a little drop of dye. So it's not that big a deal. Again, the reason they don't do these kinds of things in the factories is just time. It's a time savings, but they're sacrificing, quality by not doing these things. And at least that's my opinion. I've already cleaned this off pretty well. I've got at least all the glue off of it, but I'm going to scrape it again to get rid of any extra glue off the surfaces here. I cleaned all the glue that was just gushed out in big globs on the inside of this. So again, I'll have a nice clean wood-to-wood surface now to put back on here. We don't need to put this back on here until after we get the neck angle set real well. In fact, we don't want to put this on there until we get that. There's a lot of glue down in this part here. There's some real thick glue right here. I'm just going to get rid of it. And I've still got some more cleaning to do down in here, and I'll do all of that again off camera. Okay, I'm getting down to the brass tacks here and getting ready to put the neck back in this, but before I do that, I thought I'll just knock off this rough fill. I put a lot more fill on here than I needed because filler always shrinks, and so I piled it up here in case it would shrink. Hopefully, you know, I'll be able to smooth this out right to the neck without any shrinkage. Trying to get it close with the rasp of the file, and then I'll get the sandpaper out. This whole end down here needs restaining anyway, so I'm not too worried about this. The color of this, I can just stain everything at once and hopefully make it look pretty good, you know. Better than the big hole in the screw that was in there. You know, again, I say to people that you have to remember on these things, I didn't create the problem, I'm trying to fix the problem, you know, and so don't hate on me for using filler. I didn't make the hole there, somebody else made the hole. Now you could have tried to fit it with a dowel or something and try to cover up the hole that way, but the problem with all that stuff is to do a good job it takes a lot longer, and you know, on an inexpensive instrument you don't want to spend the customer's money on frivolous stuff. So I try to do what's appropriate to the instrument, not so much, you know, what's the very best option all the time, or the most elaborate option, or however you want to think of that. In other words, simple is good sometimes. And that's where we're at. That looks and feels pretty darn good right there. So I think I'm going to stop, go to the sandpaper. My kind of go-to sandpaper for most of these things is 220. So I'll pull out a piece of 220 and just a small piece and clean that up right there. I like 220. It's got just enough coarseness to work, yet it's smooth enough that you don't have to do much more than that after you're finished with it. You don't really need to go to a finer sandpaper. It's just really my favorite sandpaper overall. There you go. You can see it's kind of down to the minimal there. Looks pretty good to me. I'm not going to worry about staining it right now. I'll put it back together and then we'll do all the staining to try to match everything up all at one time. On another side of the coin, this is so bad through here, I don't even know if it's worth staining anything other than maybe just trying to cover this area up. So I really don't know. We'll see how it goes. Play it by ear. Okay, so fitting it in here now, I was expecting it to go down a little further than it is. It doesn't seem to go down to where this is flush. I thought it probably would go down that far, but maybe it's not supposed to, and probably not supposed to because of this little lip here. See, the lips are on this here, so this is a hold, you know, to stand that off. So it looks like it matches up really well. Now I'm just gonna eyeball down through here, just holding it tight like this. And I'm gonna see if there's still a ski ramp. Yep, there's a huge ski ramp. So this can't quite go like this. We've got to do something to drop this down, or we have to set the neck angle down a little bit. or perhaps even both. So let me find his bridge. Yeah, this bridge has been set down incredibly low. So, you know, it's down at the bottom, and they've even filed the posts off, you can see. So the neck angle itself is probably not that good. Yeah, it's still very low, so we really do need to change the neck angle itself and drop the neck angle down, because you can see here that this won't even clear the bridge. In fact, it's a full 3/16 of an inch below the top of that saddle, and we would want it like that. And if you look at, if we set it like that, even though I'm not all the way to the end down here, you can see there's quite a gap there. So we definitely do need to change the angle on this a little bit. I was afraid of that. I really didn't want to do that. It's in there. This is actually a tight joint. That's on the, you know, good on the positive side. It is a tight joint. But the only way we can really change this is to take some of this toe off. In other words, if we were to cut at an angle across here. So in other words, I'm exaggerating it, but we would take off a lot to nothing up here. Now, we don't need to take off a lot. We just take off more down here and nothing up here, basically. So I would say we need to remove, based on what I'm seeing there, I'm just, you know, arbitrarily saying we need to take off about, oh, I don't know, 20 thousandths or something down to nothing. That's just a guess. But a little bit goes a long way by the time you get back to the bridge area back here. So it doesn't take very much to change it a lot. So I'm going to say, you know, 10 to 20 thousandths to nothing is really what we need to do. Ain't nothing to it except to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and just give it a shot. I'm going to take off some of this. And you might say, well, you haven't measured anything. Well, I don't typically measure things like this. I just do them by experience, feel, you know, that kind of thing. And I generally make it work out. I don't usually have any trouble with that. If you need to do more measuring and all that kind of thing, well, then that's what you should do. It's very hard wood, I can tell you that. It's cutting, but it's cutting very minimal, which is good because I don't want to cut a lot. So what I'm going to do first is just work on this very heel and put it back in there and see if I have a gap now. If I have a gap, then I'm going to, you know, work from that gap down to nothing. Yeah, I do have a little bit of a gap now. If you look there and see, there is just a tiny bit of a gap. And so in order for that gap to be pulled in, I can actually pull it in though. Yeah, I can actually pull it in a little bit. Maybe I don't need to do too much. With that pulled in, let me just see where the neck angle is. Holding it in with my finger, which isn't as tight as it might otherwise be. And that improved it a teeny tiny bit. So just got to do a little bit more of that, take a little more off of here, and then we're going to have to feather it out. By the way, whenever you're doing this kind of cutting, you always want to cut from the outside in. If you were to go like this and cut to the outside of this, I guarantee you will chip this out. Ask me how I know that. So basically I'm just getting less and less as I go up here. You can even use the edge of your chisel to kind of see if it's straight. That looks pretty straight, actually. Surprised myself. Here it's not straight at all. There's a big gap, so I'll work this end and see if we can't get rid of that gap. Looking better, but there's still quite a difference from one side of this neck to the other. Let me see how it looks when I put it back in there. Yeah, this side's a little more messed up, but that's kind of the way it was. I didn't do that, I don't think. Let me go ahead and set this back on here and see if we've gotten any change yet. A little tiny bit maybe, but boy, it's very minimal. So I'm going to just keep working on that joint. I'm going to go ahead and do most of that off camera until I get satisfied with where it's at, and then I'll show you what that looks like. At least the joint's still fairly tight. That's a good thing. Well, I've done several more iterations of cutting the toe off that neck heel there, or whatever you want to call that, how you want to refer to that. Anyway, dropping the angle, and I'm at the top of the saddle now, but boy, just barely there, and so I've got to go some more. I can't believe how much I've had to take off this thing. I think I'm about there though. I think I'm really close. There is a little bit of a standoff here. I need to take it out of the middle more. The middle is still protruding, keeping the toe from coming down. And same way on this side, I think. So I think we're getting very close. I'm going to try to put it back in there one more time. It's really hard to tell because I'm trying to hold it there with my finger rather than something that would put more pressure on it. That's right at the top. We've definitely improved it, but it's still not quite optimal. I'm going to try to go just a little bit more, and then we're going to call that good enough. So I'll do that and let you see how that looks here in a minute. Well, I put this strap around here, and I'm trying to push the neck down with that. That's not working very well. It's such an angle, but you can see there now that we're in the ballpark. Yeah, that's just not working. This strap works great on guitars because the heel's longer and it's flatter. This is such an angle that it just slides off. So I'll have to think of a way to hold this tight when I do this. I think I know how I can do it, but this just isn't going to work for this application. I think when I can keep that down there now, I kind of think I'm at the right angle, but the problem is to test it, it's really hard. And that's good. I think that's going to be just about right. I think I'm going to go ahead and call that good enough. Now let's just see if we put this on here, is there still a big hump? There's a little bit, but not very bad now. I mean, I think I can plane that out of it. You know, I think I can get rid of that. That shouldn't be much of a problem. So I think we've done what we need to do here. So as I glue this in, I'm going to find a way to hold this back tight that direction. And I'll show you what that looks like once I figure it out. I almost got ahead of myself here. I wanted to clean the paint off of this area here because that also is a glue joint, and I want it to you know, not be glued to this varnish or paint or whatever. So I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to take this scalpel and I'm going to trace that. Now that I have that traced, as you can see there, I'm going to get rid of all of the finish inside of that tracing. And you might be going, well, that's overkill, but honestly, this is part of your strength again. And you know, you don't want to sacrifice anything on a neck joint for strength, because that's all you got. You know, your strength of your glue holding this neck on with all that 8 strings pulling on it. You want to give it every chance to succeed that you can give it. And this is very easy to clean off, and the glue will stick to this much better than it will to that crummy varnish and paint that was on there. So you can see how one side's clean there and the other side not yet, but we will clean it also. This only takes a matter of seconds. You can see how quick I can do it. So it's worth doing. Again, I just use my chisel as a scraper, and that's all you need. You just need a tool for the job, and chisels work great as scrapers if you know how to use them. I think that's sufficient. So now we're going to go over to another location and clamp this up, and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, I'm going to get glue all over this joint. I've already got this clamped down to the table, but I'm going to unclamp it there just to get the glue on it. It'll make it easier. And I want to cover all the surfaces that are going to make contact. And that's the dovetail, the front of the neck here, or the heel, I guess you'd say. Now, you don't really have to cover this because this isn't going to be touching anything, at least not yet. Now, I may actually fill that here in a minute, but right now we're just going to make contact on those areas there. Then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to get the glue on this surface that we just cleaned off. Make sure it's covered really well, and then I'm going to get the glue on the interior of the dovetail. And again, I really brush it a lot to make sure there's no air pockets, to make sure it's really smooth, full coverage. Once I get that, then I'll put the neck back down on here. Now, I have a little lip on the edge of this table. A bigger lip would be better, but I don't have a very big lip, so I just got to use what I got. And I'm just going to clamp it down, get it next to the edge there, and put a lot of pressure on that, quite a bit of pressure on that. Then we will set this neck on here and wallow it down and press it down and make sure it's all the way down in there. And then I've prepared this little board. This is a very soft cedar board. Now, you could do something different. You could use leather or something on top of this, but in this case I don't think I need to do that. I think this is going to be just perfectly fine. And I'm going to slide this under here until, so you can see it's already starting to lift this as I slide it under here, and that's putting pressure on this. You know, it's making this, it's tipping this up to make this tighter, and that's what I want. So I'm just going to put that under there like so, and then I'm going to see if I can find a clamp that I can put pressure right here on this joint, and then I think we're good to go. So, not sure if this clamp will work for this. I wish I had a better lip. I really don't have a very good lip. Maybe, you know, I can back up here. I think what I'll do is take this drawer out, if it'll come out. I'm not sure it'll even come out. That's my problem there. All right, well, I'm figuring it out as I go. I'll go back to where I was. I think I still got an option here. All right, so I'm going to clamp this down first. Back where I was. I'll put my wood back in here. Press this down, put my wood back in here. Okay, that's good. And then I think I have an option. I think one of these large C-clamps will go underneath here and make it work. These have the quick release on them, which is really handy. Ah, just a hair short. Almost. Let's see if these clamps have enough ability to reach that. I don't know if they do or not. They might. I think so. All right, so I'll get me some good leather and put on this. I think we'll have it. Okay. So put this on here, and I'm going to raise this up quite a bit. I've got two thick pieces of leather. These are like belt leather, very thick leather, and I'm going to put both of them on here. And then I'll start tightening this down. The reason I'm using two pieces is because this type of clamp would leave a dent with just one piece of leather. And there you go. That puts the hurt on it right there. And now I'm going to just clean up what glue is sticking out as best I can. And that ought to work. Again, that piece of wood that I put under here is very soft wood. It's softer than this mandolin is made out of. It shouldn't create a problem. You could use leather on top of that also. I don't think I'll have an issue though, so I'm not worried about that in this case. If it was a a fine instrument with a soft top, I would definitely do something different than what I just did. I would make it softer as I put it under there. But I think we're fine in this case. And so now we just basically wait till tomorrow. Well, quite honestly, I probably did take a little bit more off than I intended, but I think I can still glue it and hold it level here as I glue it, and I think it'll be just fine. I don't think it's going to be an issue at all. If I did, I'd just do something else. So let me get the glue, and we'll get this thing on here and get it clamped down in place, and the angle of it looks really good, actually, so I think that'll be fine. Okay, this is not one of these areas that's real super critical on the glue, so I'm only going to put the glue on this side. Well, I take it back. I am going to put it on this front edge here, too, to glue it back to the fretboard. But that should be good. And again, I'm going to hold it level here at this area, and that should work. And I may have to get a clamp and put it on it right there to keep it level. I think it'll be fine. I think I will get a clamp. All right, I put that in there, and I feel like it's really smooth and flush. You can't really feel it now. And I put this little tiny wedge under this corner because this corner kept dropping down a little bit. But other than that, I think it feels really good. Might just put a tiny clamp right there because this corner feels like it's coming up just a tiny bit. And again, I'm not going to put much pressure on it, just enough to kind of keep it from moving. That feels pretty good. I think I'll just leave it like that. Now, you might say, well, there's got to be a void there or something. There probably is a minor amount of a void, but keep in mind there's no real pressure on that spot, and I can fill that easily with filler and dye it, and nobody will ever know it or see it, and it will never cause a problem. And because I've glued the fretboard ends back together, and because this is glued to the top, this neck can't pull up and push back into that anymore, so that's a good thing too. So it's going to be fine. I don't think there'll be any problem with it at all. I'm pretty sure this neck will hold as long as this instrument can play. Well, it's been a few days. I've set the fret, the fret that I took out of here, I've set it in place, and I'm going to hammer it into place with this plastic hammer. And I'm going to just hold it in my hand. That reduces the shock when you're hitting something like that by holding it in your hand versus leaving it on something hard or firm. I think that's good. I'm going to look that over really good. I think it's, the neck is straight now. I can feel a little bit of a hump right there on that fret that I took out, but that's kind of normal. I'm not going to worry about getting these level with these, but I am going to get from here to here level. Because there's a little fall off here is what I'm saying, in case you don't follow what I'm saying. So in other words, from here to here, it's all one perfect plane, then it falls off. But that's kind of normal on any kind of a, you know, like a guitar or anything. All right, I'm going to recrown all those. I'm probably not going to film that. You've seen me do that a million times. I'll just use my little recrowning tool and go over all of them like that. Okay, I've re-rounded all the frets, and I'm just going to hit them quickly with this sandpaper. This is actually 800. I normally use 600, but this popped up before I found the 600, so I thought I'll just use that, and that's fine. The 600 is fine too. And all this does is it just gets rid of any sharpness that's around. It just kind of makes them look a little more round even than the other file does. And the other thing is I like to hit the ends of the frets so that you don't feel anything sharp on the ends. You don't have to spend a lot of time doing that. Just a little bit like that is all you need. Whenever I'm done with that every time, I always take the brush and clean it off. Because we've got so much issues, and because we had to fill this big hole, I think I'm going to do some staining on this. I wouldn't normally do all that, but I think I'm going to in this case. So I'm going to get the dark brown out, and let's just see what kind of a mess we can make here. That may be what it turns out to be. It may turn out to be a mess. You just never know till you start on something like this. So I'm going to pick up this brown, and I'm going to go around this. It doesn't look too bad. It's not nearly as dark as some of the other old finish. It kind of softens it up a little bit. It doesn't, you know, it's not so so white and that. I'm not going to go crazy with this because I can tell it's not going to match anyway, but at least it gets rid of some of the whiteness. That looks okay. I think on the fretboard on top up here, I think I'll start with brown on that also, even though, and the reason is because the bridge is brown on this, and this may have been black at one time. I can't really tell. It probably was, but I think I'm just going to put brown on it just to darken it up a little bit. All right, we'll call that good enough for the moment. I'll get me a towel and clean this up. So I just take this towel and dry it off, and you know, I don't know if that really helped anything or not, to be truthful. It didn't hurt anything, I don't think. Now we're going to work on a couple of things. There's a piece of binding loose here, and we got to clean up these dots and all that good stuff. Just lots of little things. So I'm going to clean up these dots just by taking this round pointed X-Acto blade and cleaning them up with that, because I can control that really good and not hit the rest of the fingerboard. Oh, that looks pretty good. Now the edges got stain on them whenever I did that, and that's pretty typical, so I'll just take a little straight edge razor blade here and clean that off, hopefully. We'll have to stick this binding back down too, but I'll clean it off before I glue it. So I'll clean up the rest of that binding, and I'll show you what it looks like here in just a minute. I used to fix all these little binding problems with you know, the kind of glue that melts the binding to the wood. So an acetate based or something like that glue, but I've been using this Canopy 560, I think is what it's called. Yeah, Canopy glue Formula 560. I have a link to it on my website on the products I use. It's really good stuff. It's water based, so it's water cleanup. You don't have to worry about it eating up your finish and things like that, which the other kinds of glues will actually eat your finish if you're not careful. So it's really nice with this. You can just put it on like this, squeeze it out, and it gets tacky really fast. So in a lot of cases, especially if there's no stress on this, you're pretty much done just once you put the glue on it and you just press it together like that. So I think that's probably sufficient. I'm going to check and see if there's any other loose spot. I seem to think there was a loose spot on the tailpiece here too. I don't see it. It doesn't seem to be loose now. Maybe it was just on the neck. But anyway, that Canopy glue is really good stuff for gluing binding back. It's really good for gluing plastic to wood. If you have an application where you're trying to glue plastic to wood, I would recommend Formula 560. And like I said, there's a link to it on my website on the products I use. I would appreciate it if you'd buy it that way, because I do get a slight kickback. It doesn't cost you any extra. There you go. The only other thing I want to try to do is see if I can fill these two little tiny cracks where I sawed it in half. I'm trying to think of how I want to try that to do that. I'm almost thinking to just fill it with the glue. It's really not very noticeable anyway, and this glue is pretty similar colored. I think I'll just try that. Put it on there and just wipe it smooth. Let that kind of fill the crack. It's already kind of filling it over here anyway. Put a little bit more on it and just let that go at that. I think that'll do a good job. It's a little different color, but you know, you can't have everything on these things, and trying to find something that would match the color would be kind of tough anyway. I think it's in real good shape now. I think we're ready to start stringing this puppy up, so let's get going. For this mandolin, I'm using really light strings. I think that's what this type of mandolin should have, because, you know, these tops aren't always braced all that well. This one might be braced. I can't really tell without looking in there, but you know, I would just recommend for this style of mandolin, put light strings on it. These tail pieces are a little difficult to deal with sometimes. I'll only show the one string going on. I'm sure we're going to need to raise the bridge up some, because this bridge was down at the very lowest possible setting. That'll probably be close. And then what you do is you go from the inside around to the outside like that, and you wrap it around once and back around again, and then back through the hole toward the outside. But you make sure when you put this wire back through that it goes over the top of all the other strings that have been wound so far. That way you're still winding toward the bottom of your post. You know, your string is pretty much tight instantly. I'm going to raise this up some more. It could be that we'll have to get a taller bridge for this, because we're way up there now. It'll probably be fine. We'll see. I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of the strings on this, and then I'll show you what it looks like here in just a minute. Well, my friends, the little silver tone that could, does, or wanted to be, is. He is a mandolin again, and it does play good. Look at the action here. Holds a pick at the 7th, 8th, 9th fret. I guess that's the 9th fret. And the bridge is up off the top there. It used to be squatted all the way down, and so we got a neck. We've got a good angle on the strings now, pressure on the top, perfect action. It ain't never been that good. I just go out on a limb and say that. I'm pretty positive that's the truth. Let's see here. I'll just put the camera down here and zoom in on the mandolin, and I'll play you the very first tune I ever learned to play, and it was on a mandolin almost exactly like this. Having a little bit of issue staying in tune, but that's because I just tightened the strings up like 5 seconds before I made that clip, and they're brand new, of course, and it's going to stretch and move for a while because it's been unstrung for a month there. Anyway, it's up in really tip-top shape. I don't think it could be much better. So I'm sure hoping that the fella is going to enjoy it and be glad that his little mandolin is restored. And as I mentioned at the beginning, there's the number that I believe was his military ID number, is what I think it was, that he told me. And I don't believe it belongs to the fellow that brought it to me. I believe it belonged to the fellow that was in the war. The fellow that brought it to me, I believe, inherited this mandolin. That's the story I remember, and I hope I didn't screw that up too badly. I hope you enjoyed seeing this little mandolin come back to life. Thank you so much for watching. If you're not already a subscriber, shame on you, and get that done, okay? And then if you would, please just give me a thumbs up also. That always helps us out. And don't forget to check out the products I use on my webpage, and purchase those products if you can. That helps give me a little kickback too. Thank you so much.